Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here. Today we're talking about the new God of War game that just released because I just stayed up all night playing it. So here's some unbiased, off-the-cuff impressions after playing about 8 hours of it. Now, by looking at the trophies and kind of making a guess, I think I'm about halfway through this, or maybe even less than that. This game is clearly probably about 20 hours long if you're trying to get all the collectibles, all the upgrades, all the optional side stuff. This is a pretty big game that has almost a sort of deceptively simple premise on the surface. This is a Metroidvania God of War game with almost this concept art, comic book art style. And really, what's wild to me is that this very much fits into the God of War timeline at the very, very start. But let me break it down. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd appreciate if this video could get a couple thousand likes. But let's do some sleep-deprived impressions of this. So what is Sons of Sparta? Last night we had a very good state of play. It was an hour long, showed a bunch of new PlayStation 5 games, but they ended off announcing a new complete remake of the original God of War trilogy. That's awesome. But they also shadow dropped this. The hype around this was so crazy it actually crashed the PlayStation Store for about 30 minutes. But Sons of Sparta is a new game that takes place in an earlier era of Kratos, way before he even considered becoming the God of War, back when not only was he a human, but he was just a family man. The framing of it is that essentially Kratos is on his farm, he's with his family, and he's telling a story to his daughter about growing up, about trying to basically find the meaning of honor, of trust, of family. And through this lens, what's actually going on is we're seeing a teenage version of Kratos going around and basically going against a bunch of like mythological beasts and teaming up with his brother Deimos. And I really think that something that struck me the most about this very immediately is that one thing I think that is the greatest tragedy of the early God of War games is that I always wanted more about like the vengeance, the anger, that human side of Kratos is why I like the later games more than the early games. The fact that Kratos' family dies such a horrible, horrible death almost seems forgotten at times. So getting an entire game that sort of fleshes that out while you're playing through this game, there is a constant rolling narrative, and it's the original voice actor for Kratos. He's still a genius. Obviously, he's still such a legendary voice actor, but it's cool to hear the original voice of Kratos talking to his daughter, being soft, hearing him sort of do asides of jokes, of these open up bits of like inner Kratos that we never get a chance to see. And whoever is playing his daughter, she is amazing. She does all sorts of questions. She'll actually stop the story and like talk over the gameplay and ask follow-up questions and stuff. The writing in this is tip top, but these actors absolutely carry the game. But okay, what do we do in this game? What is it that makes this game so long and so fun, right? Well, Sons of Sparta is very much just a classic Metroidvania where they kind of give you different tasks, right? All right, go and find somebody in the woods. Go find some missing tools. Go check out this lost ruins and temple and stuff. But what makes Metroidvanias so incredibly fun is that very necessary sense of progression. You go one place and you get a magical slingshot. All right, now we can open up that. Now you get this ability to throw, you get like this branch of the gods that lets you sling fire. Now you can burn ivy and keep progressing. I like the fact that this sense of progression, though, I think works better than a lot of Metroidvanias because it still has that God of War combat to it. So the way this works is that when you're fighting, I'm going to use this controller here sort of as an example because honestly, I really, really like the combat. While you're fighting, this isn't just about smashing people to bits or doing crazy takedowns. It's about the spirit and the mana conservation. So while you're trying to fight, whenever you hold R1 and press attack, you can actually knock people back. And by doing these style attacks, this costs you spirit. That's the yellow meter, spirit meter, right? As you do this, though, it hurts their poise. If you get somebody to maximum poise, you can do an instant takedown. Now, this isn't really optional in my opinion. These enemies kind of hurt. You do not naturally regen health, and naturally, enemies don't just drop health. They'll drop red orbs, which basically can be used for like updates and getting like new skills and stuff. But most enemies you fight, they're constantly whittling you down. You need to use these spirit attacks and those takedowns because those refill about 70% of your total health pool. So it makes it, while you're exploring, the gap between checkpoints can be pretty dang big at times. In fact, some of these areas, I went through like literally like 20 or 30 minute chunks between checkpoints. There's like these auto checkpoints. If you die on like a boss, it'll restart you right there. But there were big chunks of the game where going from one campfire to the next was an entire zone. So I did find myself having this interesting sort of, I want to use the word fear, but I like fear in video games where there's this constant sense of tension of, all right, now I need to use more spirit attacks. Oh, this big creature I know is really, really hurting. They're higher level than me. Okay, I'm going to make sure I'm really doing these takedowns, getting my health refilled. Now, there's also mana. So your special abilities you get, they're called your tools. These are used not just for ranged attacks. A lot of them are used for puzzles and stuff, but you can also use it to chip away some enemies. A lot of times in some of the bigger skirmishes, you'll have like one or two guys that are really heavy hitters and then a couple like flying enemies with almost zero health, usually like bugs or tiny little like skeletal flying things, right? You can just use the slingshot and wipe those guys out. And I like the fact that there's this interesting strategy sometimes of hit, poise attack, finisher, throw a thing, get over here, get some range, dodge through it. Now, there is also parrying and blocking. I'll be honest, I did not use that at all. In any of these God of War games, even when they give you a big fancy shield, to me, I'd rather just dodge roll. I mean, I've played so many thousands of hours of Dark Souls games. If I have a giant dodge roll, I'm always going to dodge roll. And the enemies have different styles of unblockable or undodgeable attacks. Stuff where they very much try and get in your face and crush you. I think that if anything, the combat not just feels incredibly fair, I think it's almost too generous at times. Mostly because I do like the fact that some games I hate run back. If you like have a crazy cool boss fight that has multiple phases, if I die, I don't want to redo that whole fight. Thankfully, when you die in this game against bosses, it starts you in the boss room immediately and with full health, full mana, full poise. So you can immediately just go straight back to learn that boss. But even then, I do think that in this first 8 hours, most of the bosses, I usually beat stuff on the first 2 or 3 tries. I don't think I beat really too much on the first try, but I do like the fact that this is one of those games where it's enjoyable to kind of figure it out, but as soon as you kind of figure out there are like 2 or 3 big moves, most of the fights in this game are pretty much a breeze. Which I guess does kind of make sense. I mean, nobody's really playing God of War for that immense level of difficulty, right? Nobody's Dark Souls and God of War here, but I really gotta say that I really just think that there's an interesting flow to this game. You're constantly running into Deimos. I think that in the menus it said you could play this game co-op. I don't really have anybody to play it here with. It's couch co-op only, not online co-op, so I couldn't really play this with somebody, but it would be interesting to play this with somebody else playing Deimos. In a lot of the encounters and stuff, Deimos would actually be with you as just an NPC-controlled person, but I want to talk a bit about the upgrades and about how I like how this does some interesting carrot on a stick drip feed information. A lot of the dialogue feels optional, and I really enjoy that, which is that every time you run into Deimos at campfires, a lot of times you have a chance to either talk to him or just run off, right? If you want to go to the next objective, you can just open up the map, see which direction you're supposed to go, and go there. But I did enjoy talking to Deimos when he's just discussing, I don't know, crushes. There's like a girl he likes in town or a friend that's missing. One of the big quests you do pretty early on is like you're trying to find this missing sort of classmate who's honestly a very bad Spartan. He's a bad warrior, and so because of it, the town refuses to go look for him. The Spartans basically say that if he dies, it's better for the strength of the Spartan army to have one less weak soldier. And they have this interesting philosophical kind of conversation of like, all right, maybe he won't always be weak, right? Kratos is strong. Kratos is the strongest person maybe in the universe, right? But he didn't start that way. He trained, he practiced, he drove, he didn't give up. Maybe not giving up on this guy actually matters. Now, obviously, these dialogues aren't super crazy or in-depth, but I don't know, it's interesting to see this reflective nature to Kratos, to see him kind of just thinking about the impact of decisions and really the meaning of strength. Now, let's talk about the puzzles and let's talk about the upgrades. There are puzzles in this game, but they're pretty much exactly as hard as they were in like God of War Ragnarok, which is to say not hard at all. Usually it's like, all right, there's 2 boxes and they're connected by a thread. Oh, push one down and now you can just jump up on the other. There is just very little to these puzzles. I guess I don't really hate them, but a lot of them were just kind of like, oh, okay. I don't know. They didn't really add to the world, but I guess they don't really take away from it. All the puzzles in this game kind of just took me about 30 seconds and went, oh, okay, I guess that's fine. But The other thing is the upgrades. Now, there is a ton of different versions of upgrades. As you kill monsters, you get experience points, which unlocks more styles of attack. You know, your dodge roll can now end in a spike. Oh, now you can actually do something where whenever you're doing your shield block, parrying is easier. You can make it where one of my favorites was I fully upgraded that my combo was longer when I just pressed square, 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 and ended with a big super attack that would actually stagger even more. I do like that sense of progression. There is also, this takes the upgrade system from God of War and God of War Ragnarok, where as you're exploring, you find all sorts of raw crafting materials. You know, you find skins and hides and irons and copper. And by using that, it gives you a bigger chance to keep upgrading the specific damage of each of these weapons, right? But there's also an extra part. Essentially, the most hidden and most important is that there are these 11 bars of steel. When you take those back to the blacksmith in town, he'll give you a very significant big upgrade. I have not found all 11. I just know there's 11 because I looked at the trophies. But I do like the fact that the sense of progression, you are definitely getting stronger. Some of those early fights, when you first get to a zone, there is like a little bit of a, oh man, I got to learn all these new enemies. And it feels good when you get that big significant leap in power. I do like when I have that spear and suddenly it feels like it's not just going further and hitting harder, but it almost feels like it has more of like a piercing effect to it. Overall, I think I like this game a lot. My big issue is that it does still feel a little bit like maybe I'm just not really in a Metroidvania feel. I almost wish it had just a little bit more boss fights. I think it's worth that $30 price tag. I think the boss fights themselves are very well designed, even if, you know, it's pretty much just dodge roll and waiting for your open to attack. I just wish that it had a little bit more random, cool, tough fights in some of the areas. But so far, impressions after this first night of playing, I like it. I love it. It's definitely something that was a very, very good surprise. Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. Did you buy God of War Sons of Sparta? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. I still got my sweet God of War Collector's Edition controller here. I love you very much. If you could, please give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. Oh man, I am tired as hell. And I have not drank a Red Bull yet, but we're about to be drinking a Red Bull to edit this video. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, you know, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.